Hi. We've been at CES now looking at some of the more interesting, compelling developments in this arena, and certainly one of the things that's been on the minds of people for some time at CES and elsewhere has been the idea of using means of synchronizing viewing of television with enhanced applications that are sent out on the screens as people are watching, and that requires some degree of automatic content recognition or other magical software means of making this synchronization possible. One of the proponents of this from the standpoint of creating that synchronization as part of a deep background in applications on augmented television is Flingo, and we are privileged to have with us Ashwan, who's the CEO of Flingo. So why don't we start, Ashwan, with you giving us a sense of how you have brought this ability to keep up with what people are watching into the application space, so-called automatic content recognition and ACR, to enhance that experience.
Sure, it's a great question. So Flingo's history has always been in applications, in content, and making new experiences possible on the television. The means to the end, and what we're showing here today, is ACR, but we don't actually use the term ACR much. Right. And the reason is that consumers aren't asking for ACR. They don't even really know what ACR and know that they care about ACR. So what we're trying to build is a new television experience. There is some ACR in the core technology, but we've been really focusing on user experience and how to make television better for the consumer and more valuable for the broadcasters and advertisers. If we figure that one out, and I think we have in Samba, we think we're going to see a lot more traction in the future.
What's Samba?
Samba is our new product. We're showing it here at the show. It's an interactive TV platform. And it allows a smart TV or set-top box to automatically contextualize the TV experience against what's on screen. So when you're watching TV, people like to watch TV with friends. Social TV is a core component of Samba. Broadcasters, when they have shows on your TV, they'd like you to be there longer. They'd like you to be more excited and have a more memorable experience. And so interactive TV is a core component of Samba. And then finally, the broadcasters would like this to be valuable and profitable for them. So we've added an interactive advertising capability as well. All of that underlying technology is ACR, it's video fingerprinting, and it's very appropriately designed for these three applications. But what we want to do is show the potential for this in the end user level.
Well, does this mean then that for this experience to happen, that the viewer is using a second screen in the context of watching what's on the television?
It's a very good question. So we think part of the problem right now that we're trying to solve is that people are thinking of the first screen and the second screen as two completely separate things. Right. You've seen some very ambitious first screen efforts like Google TV, and over the years there's been an interactive TV movement that's come from the cable industry. And then you see a second screen ecosystem that's companies that have an iPad app or an iPhone app that are using audio sync to figure out what's on the screen. We think that these two shouldn't be so disjointed. They shouldn't be thought of as two separate things. Interactive TV is about first screen and second screen working in concert with each other. The other problem we see happening in the industry right now is we think of traditional TV and smart TV as two very separate things, and they shouldn't be. Smart TV should be woven and integrated into the traditional TV experience, so that as I'm watching TV, the smart TV can make that experience better and weave in content and information from the web that's appropriate for traditional TV.
So the key here is really the smart television from the standpoint of it is communicating on the web to bring applications to the screen based on what somebody's watching at that time.
You got it. Yeah, it's about.
So it doesn't require that second screen. If it's a smart TV, the smart TV is able to bring in those applications as a function of what somebody's watching.
Well, our contention is that the first screen and second screen should be working together. And there's some things that people will want to do with the TV remote, and there's some things that they'll want to do with an iPad or an iPhone, and that we shouldn't confuse those metaphors. We should actually build an experience that's iPad-centric, and we should build an experience that's TV-centric. ACR underlying is great, but the user experience for these two different platforms will be very different.
Now, will the same content provider be interested in both, or some are more interested in one than the other? In terms of the tablet app, the second screen versus the first screen app?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the end goal is this. We want TV to be better. We want the end user to feel like it's more fun, it's more engaging, more memorable. And the other goal is to make sure that the TV airtime is getting more value to the advertiser. And so these two goals are what we have in mind in Samba. And we're, again, using ACR as a means to those two ends.
Now, in terms of getting this all off the ground, it starts with having that ACR capability built into certain devices, right?
You got it.
So you've started to announce, you've announced several chip manufacturer affiliations. Tell us a little bit about those and where it's all going as far as seeding the footprint of devices that you need to get the programmers and advertisers engaged.
Yeah, great question. So today we announced two new OEMs into our portfolio of partners. Haier and Hisense, two very strong brands from China who are coming into the US market with smart TV products. We also announced a partnership with Entropic, which makes chipsets for cable set-top boxes and media players that you hook up to TVs.
So this gets us into the cable set-top arena where it's not a smart TV.
True, and there's really only two horizontal platforms in the television that exist across all networks and all shows, and one is the cable operator or satellite operator, and the second is the smart TV.
So in respect, I interrupted you, but getting back to the embedded device side of things, tell us a little bit more beyond Entropic, some of the devices that you're out there in.
Oh, I'd be happy to show you the product, actually. I think that would be it'd be a good way to sort of explain why there's these OEMs so interested. So I'll shift gears here.
All right.
So what we have here is a demonstration of Samba, which again is a first screen and second screen product. In this particular example, what we're doing is watching a really popular broadcast show called New Girl on Fox. Fox is working with us to make the show more interactive. And so what they're trying to do as you're watching the show is introduce fun things you can be doing to keep this experience better. In this case, what they're introducing is some fun facts about the show. But one thing that they're also very excited about is trivia and polls that you can be taking. What this is ultimately able to do is basically gamify a bit of the television experience. We're not ignoring the second screen though. So in the Samba framework, what you have is, in addition to this sort of TV-centric interface, it only uses 5 buttons. You've got a more immersive experience that shows up on the iPad or iPhone. Here, what we have is much more metadata than you would ever care to have on your television. But things like who's that actor or what's that song, that kind of metadata you would see here. A lot of times people see an actress or an actor and they want to know who that person is, so we've got that all sort of exposed. We also have pulled in the social media conversations that have happened about the show. But the thing that we're really excited about and we think is the killer feature is actually recommendations. Discovery is something that's really lacking in the TV experience today. So while you're watching TV with this second screen, again, something that you may not want on the first screen are recommendations of videos on the web or broadcast shows that you may like based on the fact that you're watching New Girl.
Now again, what's showing up here on the second screen is in sync with what you're watching.
100%.
So it's not just it happens to be the same program, it happens to be how it's changing in the sequence on the main program.
You got it. And what we're doing from an algorithmic perspective is analyzing these videos on a frame-by-frame basis. So what we'll try to do in terms of metadata that's synchronized with this show is actually on a frame-by-frame level. So if there's something that has to happen with this particular show at this particular time stamp, we can do that with our technology.
Now, the things that are showing up along the bottom of the screen here are just involuntarily showing up, but then it's up to the user to interact with one of the buttons on the remote.
Yep. So there's 2 ways that you would see something on your TV. One, a user asks to share or to do something with the TV remote. Second way is that the broadcaster is saying, we'd like to run a poll or a trivia or some other thing. If this is something that the user just doesn't want, it's very easy to switch this off and they'd never see it again.
Okay, so there's the voluntary opt-in or not off of the remote based on what the programmer is showing.
Yeah.
Now,
the platform is driven by either the user or the broadcaster.
Now, you've just introduced Samba. Obviously, somebody's already been activated with it, and from a programming standpoint, where do things stand as far as the creation of content that takes advantage of this platform?
It's a really great question. I think the best experience for first screen, second screen companions to broadcast are those which are driven by the broadcasters. there's been a lot of talk at the show today, because we do automatic advertising detection as well. There's been a lot of talk about who should be selling the advertising. And we think the people who should be selling the advertising are the people who are already selling the advertising. It's the broadcaster. The reason is that the last thing we want is a very cluttered experience that's conflicting and destroying the value of television. What we actually think will happen is the broadcasters are going to initiate, they're going to take this platform, they're going to make their shows better and make their ads more interactive. And so here what you'll see is broadcaster-initiated ad sales and broadcaster-initiated app development. There's varying levels of investment that the broadcasters are going to invest this year. Some are going to say, well, social TV is what we want to do, and we want to do it with our existing Facebook and Twitter accounts. Some are going to say, we know what, we'd like to actually make some of our shows more interactive. So if you're watching American Idol, make it very easy to vote with your TV remote. And then some are going to go to the next step and say, we're going to take this to our upfronts this year. We're going to go to the advertisers and say, in addition to interactive TV, we're going to enable interactive advertising using the smart TV.
Now, with the interactive advertising aspect, it's not a personalization thing that you're getting into, unless it comes into the second screen, right?
It can be, absolutely. We think personalization really, the power of personalization is when it actually is personal. The TV is a shared device,
right.
So there's limits on how much you can personalize there. We're going to drive more of that personalization in the iPad, the iPhone.
But the ad sale idea would be, okay, a certain amount of interactivity on the main screen, but then a personalization component on the second screen.
You got it.
That's part of the whole sales proposition from a programmer perspective as to what they have to offer once this is up and running.
You got it. Yeah,
now,
right.
Of course, the big thing with advertising is you need an audience. And as popular as a program like this might end up being, there's still the question of, okay, this application has to be seeded in all those devices and in those TVs and set tops. Where do you think that'll go, and how long? I mean, are programmers going to be willing to experiment with a relatively small audience base to start with, or are they going to sit back and wait? And
if you'd asked me that question last year, I would have had a very different answer. And the reason is that I think broadcasters today realize that connected devices that have ACR and synchronization ability are going to be fantastic ways to connect with the users. They're going to be also fantastic ways to collect data. And the last thing that the broadcasters want is for this data to influence decisions in the wrong direction, whether it's the decisions that users make or the decisions that advertisers make. And so I think the broadcasters feel the strategic necessity to get in front of those decisions and still stay in that position of being the advertising entity as well as the programmer.
So that, I guess the answer then is that they need to get out in front with whatever audience base they can start with and build a cultural recognition of this whole thing, not only from the advertiser end but from the consumer end, so where it starts to become more and more mainstream. But they have enough base in the existing set tops. Entropic obviously is out there with some of your device suppliers to get a start, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and by the way, this market isn't nascent anymore. We've got hundreds of millions of smartphones and tablets out there. You've got 20 million smart TVs in the U.S. alone. This is not it's not a stretch of imagination at this point to say that, well, once ACR is enabled in all these devices, you're going to have fantastic data and fantastic interactive opportunities. So it's sort of real now. It's no longer the time to kind of guess when it's going to happen. It's happening. It's happening this year.
Well, certainly our feedback in talking to some of the programmers, we just met with a gentleman from Turner. They're not waiting.
That's right.
It's like, okay, we see what this could be, and to sit back and wait for a mass audience is going to be to sit back too long.
Yeah.
Let's move it ahead and see what we get and keep building it incrementally. But across the board, what we're hearing is that the programmers are ready to step in and start experimenting seriously and building some real applications and even commercials that fit into this market.
I think that's absolutely right. Okay. Yeah, there's definitely, Turner's been a great leader in the industry. NBC Universal's been out in front of this. A number of media companies have come through. Flingo at the show here and expressed their desire to start building on these platforms and to really kind of enhance the viewing experience for their shows.
Well, it's going to be a fun year to see how this unfolds. That we're finally where it's actually doable. So,
yeah,
if Madison Avenue can catch up, then we'll be in business, right?
It's true, and thanks for doing your part to let everyone know about it.
All right. Well, thank you, Ashwin. I really appreciate it.
All right.